is offered to do us at Karakia. Len.
Kia ora. Nā mai haere mai, tu tawa mai I runga, tu tawa mai I raro, tu tawa mai I roto, tu tawa mai I waho. Kia tau e ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, taiki e. Ngā mihi nui.
Ata Maria, good morning, members, and we have a special guest star, Councillor Peter Revell, who's joining us for the meeting. And we do have an apology for lateness from Councillor Connell. Would anybody like to move the receipt? Yep, Rebecca. I'll second that. All those in favour? Aye. Aye. Now, excitedly, we do have a public forum speaker, Jess Brett. If you'd like to come up to the front. Hello, good welcome. Yep. I'll keep an eye on the time and let you know when you've got a minute left. My binger doesn't work anymore, so I will somehow let you know without the bing.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, respected Mayor, councillors, community board members, and council staff. I'm Jaspreet Kaur from Thames Taxis Limited. We are a local business, and we provide essential services to this town, like taxis, total mobility services, Thames Connector service, and Thames-Coromandel Connector service at the moment for both locals and tourists of this town. We've been selected as one of the providers for the Thames Connector service to Coromandel, and it has been an incredible opportunity to do that. We've received really good positive feedback from both tourists as well as locals, particularly those who have lost the ability to drive due to age and cost-related issues. And the service enabled them to travel regularly to the town and back and enjoy the free service, actually, which is really good. So a very good example that I would like to share here is a visually impaired man who would take this bus service to go to Coromandel with his brother and do hiking trips over there. So there's a lot of stories like this, but this is something that I wanted to share and improve the quality of life for people. So thank you so much. Locals and backpackers also took the service to go to use the service to travel to the area for the work, and that also benefited them because the service let them save money. Is that the dong? No. Oh God. Right. Okay. And our friendly team was actually enjoyed a lot of this exposure as well, because they were a team of like 4 or 5 who took turns, and they provided a lot of tourist information. So it was actually run like a tourist bus service, which provided them with local knowledge, journey making enjoyable, and information around the town as well as Coromandel area too. So as awareness has grown about the service, more people are taking the service, but unfortunately it's coming to an end. So, however, we are grateful for the time, and it was available for our town. So I urge anybody who's here to take the service while it's still running until 18th of June. So we sincerely hope if the council look into continuing this valuable service for the benefit of the town and the tourists who visit us. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Oh, you finished ahead of time. Thank you, Jaspreet. I will open up for questions. I see, Peter, you have a question. I will allow that. Yeah. No, please. Not really, but it's up to the discretion of the chair. I will allow you to ask a question at this stage.
Hey, thanks for that. Thank you, Chair. Jaspreet, do you have any commentary about the timetable, about just about the timetable that you're into?
So when it was introduced, there was only Thames to Coromandel, and then later on multiple stops were introduced. And the feedback that we received, they are really good, but they wanted a little bit more stops. So maybe when you do look into future, then talk to Waikato Regional Council. So as Thames Taxis Limited in 2020, we did talk to Waikato Regional Council around this service quite a long time back, and the whole thing was done. But unfortunately, I know that there were some funding issues from here as well as from there, and the service couldn't continue. And this was just a trial run under the social recovery funding, but sadly.
Sure. So you're saying it would be good if there were more stops. What about the time that the time of departure from Thames and from Coromandel?
So the way it was run, again, because of funding, there were lesser days, alternative days, and Saturday was also introduced so people can come to the town for Saturday market. I was told at least it should continue for the weekdays this time, even if there's funding issues, like look into something, because people at Coromandel don't have like lots of doctors, dentists, and all those other things, so they have to come here.
Rika?
Thank you. I just wanted to understand some passenger numbers once we made the change to more stops or multiple stops along the way.
Yeah.
Did you see an obvious increase in passenger numbers?
Yes. Then the people from town could like do the pack and save shopping and go back to their place within like this region of Tripuru, Waiumu, Tepu and all that. So that would be really good.
And are you able, this might be a bit of an unfair question, are you able to give us an understanding of sort of the numbers, the type, you know, how many people were using it within a week or during the weekdays?
Yes. So the service was running in the morning as well as afternoon. I think the numbers are going to be reaching around 1,000 at the end of the 6 months trial. And so there were around 50 people taking every one turn in a week.
Right.
Yeah, and which included elderlies, parents, and children also. So that's how it is. But I think the problem sometimes is it's not marketed that well, so people don't know about it. And now they were getting to know, and it's finishing. So it's one of those things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great, Jaspreet. And can I just follow up with one question? Did you find that most of the stops that we added along the way up the coast were being used, or were there some that were more used than others?
I don't have the exact answer actually,
okay.
but I just know that the Tripuru one was used. Yeah.
Okay.
Around the shop area. Yeah. And Waiumu as well.
Was that a question, Martin? Oh, it looked like, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the time that you've taken to come and tell us about this. It's something that's very close to my heart, and I appreciate that you took the time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
We need a mover and a seconder to accept that. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Rika. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Aye, thank you. Now, I don't believe that we have any extra items to add onto the agenda. Anybody have a conflict of interest with any of the things that we're discussing? Great. In case, just minutes for confirmation. Are there any things in the minutes that require any sort of changing or correctness issues? Looked pretty fine to me, so I'm really happy to move from the chair that we accept them as they are. Thank you, John. No further discussion. All those in favour? Aye. You're very quiet today. Excellent. Feel free to talk at any stage. Fantastic. We've got our first report, and this is one that has been highly anticipated, I must say, Coromandel's Blue Highway. So we have Stephen Town coming in. He's here. Do you want to come to the front? And I believe that we also have Carl Baldwin online. Carl, are you there? I can see you.
Yeah, sure am. Hi, guys.
Hello. Good morning. Welcome.
Morning.
Quite a comprehensive report. Lots of pages of information and some pretty pictures. It was nice to see depths of harbours, which I was previously unaware of. You can take the report as read, but I'd invite you to make any comment.
Yeah, look, I think I was expecting that Carl would lead. It's his work, and I think it's pretty comprehensive and gives us a good basis to do some more preparation around future events and how we might make use of the resources that are available in the context that Carl has generated and recorded for us. Yeah, through you, Chair, I'll hand over to Carl.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Stephen. Kia ora, everybody. Hope everyone is well. Thank you for taking my report as being read. I was really excited to get the opportunity to work on this project for TCDC. It was very, very interesting, and I think the two main purposes of the report are really important. The first being the opportunity to use the Blue Highway during an emergency situation. I think we're all very familiar of what happened last summer with Cyclone Gabrielle, Cyclone Hale, and how much risk our communities are at when it comes to road closures. So that was really interesting, and also the opportunity for the Blue Highway to contribute to the greater economic growth of the district. With regards to the use of the Blue Highway during an emergency situation, it's I guess it's difficult because what I tried to do was put myself in a position or considering a situation where multiple roads are closed, like the Kopu-Hikawai, but in a number of places, and thinking about those roads potentially being closed for quite a long period of time. So from there, you think, where can we get our essential services from, or essential goods and services, and how can they be brought into the district, and whereabouts can they be brought in? And very quickly, when I was talking to a number of different ferry operators, the roll-on, roll-off ferries, or ro-ro ferries, they would be the ones that could bring in bulk goods into the district, probably essential groceries and fuel relatively easily. It's not a cheap process to bring in a ro-ro ferry, probably looking at about $15,000 for an 8-hour period or a day, and those vessels will either come from Tauranga or Auckland. So when the emergency services group get together and sort of plan for these kinds of events, they would need to be working closely with the providers of groceries and things to make sure that we get the right goods onto the right truck, onto the right vessel to be brought into the district. So there are a number of places that a large ro-ro vessel can actually come into the district. Kopu's an obvious one. Kopu being the only place with a ro-ro abutment that a vessel can land. But when we're thinking about this emergency situation, Kopu's probably got a fairly resilient road network as well. So it also, it's an opportunity for Kopu to perhaps be a distribution hub for those essential goods to be taken from Kopu and distributed around the district. But yeah, there's a little bit of cost involved there. So yeah, I mean, that will be an obvious thing to be thinking about for the emergency services team. The Sugarloaf Wharf is an interesting one for a ro-ro vessel. That's at the moment, a ro-ro vessel could actually access the existing boat ramp at the Sugarloaf Wharf. However, something that you guys are probably all well aware of is the upgrading to that facility that's going to happen. My understanding is that the new wharf that they're going to do, the new reclamation and wharf, doesn't really cater for a ro-ro vessel. So once that project gets off the ground and up and running and is operational, it's probably going to remove the opportunity for that facility to be used for ro-ro vessels, which is a bit of a shame, I think, but it's something that you don't think of very often, and it's something that you'll see in my recommendations section of my report, that I've actually said when these new coastal development projects are being considered in the future, I think we always need to be putting forward the idea of, can this facility be used for ro-ro vessels? Because I think it will be essential for an emergency response in the future. Well, maybe not essential, but certainly very helpful if we're ever in a situation where our roading network is completely buggered. Whitianga is another place where ro-ro vessels could relatively easy access, but there are some limitations. in Whiti, like the width of the boat ramp and at the wharf there in Whitianga, the boat ramp is probably wide enough to use a ro-ro vessel, but the floating pontoon wharf that the passenger ferry uses actually might complicate the ability to use a ro-ro vessel in that location. So yeah, so then we start looking at maybe the Robinson Road boat ramp, which is possible to use that as well. And then other places like the Whangapawa Harbour, Whangamata Harbour and Tairoa Harbour. At high tides, you can probably use those harbours for ro-ro vessels. And those ro-ro vessels can carry up to 4 truck and trailer units. The Sea Link vessel up in Auckland is probably your best one for bringing in the largest amount of goods. Yeah, and then from there we start talking about are helicopters going to be available for delivering essential goods into our communities, for our smaller communities, and when we're talking about perhaps only bringing in half a ton or a ton of goods, helicopters are definitely going to be a logical option to be using for some of these communities. Whereas if for some reason the cost of a helicopter or availability isn't there, we'll start using smaller vessels. And we know that there are a lot of smaller vessels, sort of medium-sized launches, mussel farming barges. There's a lot of those kinds of vessels available in our district. So we can start, utilising those services that those smaller boats can bring in, and we can sort of access various communities around our coastline. I guess I guess in summary, with the first purpose of that report was, can we use the Blue Highway in an emergency situation? And the answer is clearly yes. It's just about how we do it and the costs associated with that. The other part of this discussion document was the long-term opportunities for the Blue Highway in the Coromandel district. And this was really interesting for me, having a look at the different struggles that the Blue Highway is going through in not only New Zealand, but globally. New Zealand's geographically isolated, and we sort of struggle to, at the moment, we're sort of feeling the pinch of a lot of international shipping companies not really wanting to come to New Zealand. We're a small market, they don't get their bang for their buck to bring in their big ships into New Zealand. And that sort of flows on to what New Zealand has got in terms of our own coastal shipping fleet. And I think my report referred to back in the 80s, we had over 40 New Zealand flagged regional ships, or ships that sailed between different regions throughout New Zealand. Deregulation of the shipping industry happened in New Zealand in the 80s, and a lot more investment in our roading infrastructure, and has essentially ended up, New Zealand's got 2 regional ships that take containers around the country, and they are, I guess would be fair to say the company is called Swire International. They're an international company, but they've got a New Zealand arm that basically operates these 2 ships. And they certainly would like a little bit of a hand up from the New Zealand government. They have to pay GST, which is an issue for them, whereas international shippers don't have to pay GST. And international shippers also, they don't have to comply with New Zealand's environmental and employment regulations. So very quickly, an international ship coming into New Zealand can operate a lot cheaper and more cost effective than these 2 New Zealand flagged ships. So I would say it's pretty tenuous, the coastal shipping industry in New Zealand, or regional shipping anyway. But it's something that the past Labour government, they tried to invest in. they identified $30 million, and 4 different companies got the opportunity to use part of that $30 million to investigate shipping themselves, shipping opportunities. But most of those projects really didn't get off the ground and fell away. And now we've got new governments in the House, and they haven't identified any funding for. Well, at the time of writing my report, they hadn't identified any funding for coastal shipping in New Zealand. So it's going to be a bit of a struggle to get the Blue Highway to be a real thriving industry that it once was.
Apologies to interrupt, but just while we're on that, can I ask, because you say in your paper on page 17, Council should continue to advocate for the reinstatement of the Auckland to Coromandel passenger ferry, and I'm just going to ask my group manager if she has any comment about that. Lorna?
Yeah, through the chair. So this is more of a tourism activity. We can share now that Fullers 360 in the short to medium term won't be coming back to the Coromandel. They have said that it's just economically unviable for them. The route that they used to have coming from Rotorua through to the Coromandel has been taken over by a different provider. And so the competitiveness of this is lacking. They've also struggled with servicing the whole of the Auckland area, so they're withdrawing their services in some parts of Auckland as well, and they have struggled with employment. So we have been in discussions with some of the other commercial operators who do provide passenger services to the Karakia Gulf. At this stage, again, just in the current economic climate, it's unviable. We would be encouraging, and we will be encouraging elected members and lobbying around the value of having this service, particularly as a lot of our out-of-district ratepayers would potentially use the service more if it was more regular, and they could come to their homes, and also just with the tourism activity increasing again post-COVID and post-storms.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Just while we're on the subject, I might, if it's okay with you, Carl, open up for other questions around the table, if any of the committee members have anything to ask you specifically. John.
Thanks, Carl. Oh, you disappeared.
Oh.
Hey, thanks for the report. Appreciate it. I was intrigued by your comments regarding the Rikitahi Sugarloaf, how you thought it was possibly viable in its current state, but with its redevelopment, it wouldn't be. Can you tell me why that is? It's going to be larger, it's going to be higher, it's going to be dredged. So what's the impediment there?
Yeah, kia ora, John. So at the moment, the Sugarloaf facility is the boat ramp. The boat ramp is wide enough to allow a 8-metre wide ramp to drop down off a ro-ro vessel. So that's the double width boat ramp that's there. So at lower stages of the tide, there's a couple of mooring poles that sit either side of that boat ramp. And so when the tide is higher, the barge can't get between those 2 mooring poles. Whereas at the lower stages of the tide, the ramp can drop between those poles, and so trucks could drive off the barge and onto the existing boat ramp. And so that's the first opportunity for the existing situation. And also at king high tide, when the tide is, essentially overlapping the hard stand at the facility, a barge could actually drive right up to the edge of that wharf and drop the ramp down straight onto that hard stand. So there's 2 opportunities to use that ramp at the moment. Now, with the redevelopment of the facility, my understanding is to cater for sea level rise, the hard stand is going to be raised a certain amount. I think it might be about maybe 400-500 millimetres, so half a metre. So that's going to take the opportunity to use a ro-ro vessel there. It's not going to remove the opportunity, but certainly going to lessen the opportunity to use that at king high tides. And also the new boat ramp that they are going to put on the facility, my understanding is that it's going to be narrower, so you won't be able to fit an 8-metre wide ramp down onto that boat ramp. So that's my understanding of the situation there. The new facility isn't really going to be that good for a ro-ro vessel. Although not impossible, but certainly not as good as it is at the moment.
Right, and you'd get a ro-ro vessel up to that current boat ramp. You'd have enough depth of water to get one there, would you?
Apparently so. Talking to the couple of operators that that have done it before, they've said no problem at all. The main issue is those for the existing facility is those two mooring poles that sit on either side of the existing boat ramp.
Mm. Thank you, Carl. Can I another question?
No.
Is it am I recollecting right that during the LTP process and what have you, we looked at funding for the Blue Highway and we decided that we weren't going to put any more funding in there because of the lack of appetite by central government and the fact that private business wasn't seeing it as a viable option for them. So did we slash back our funding on that? Do you recall? We did. Thank you. That's what I thought. And so that's sort of why I think, I mean, this is a great report for future emergencies, in my opinion. We've got to be thinking about those things. Landing Weet-Bix at Kopu, I don't think is ever going to be any good for the Northern Peninsula because the roads won't allow us to get the Weet-Bix up north or over to the east if they're gone. So the structures really need to be further north. I think to continue calling it the Blue Highway is probably not right because the Blue Highway to me was all about tourism, and that is just not going to happen for a number of years. As you said, I think medium term at least. So a good report for civil defence, but the one I'd like to see not called the Blue Highway anymore because there's too many people connect that with tourism.
And I can assure you that we've got 2/3 of our emergency management team in the meeting with us. So. Yes. Hi, here you are. Any other questions? Yep, Peter, yep, go on.
Hey, thanks for the report, Carl. Really, really interesting reading. You focused a lot on the movement of goods and what have you, but my thoughts were just with regards in an emergency situation, particularly regarding the Thames-Coromandel Coast Road, which in my view is probably the most vulnerable bit of roading infrastructure we have. And the issue of moving people in particular between Thames and Coromandel in the event that that road is completely taken out. What's your view about the movement of people via between Coromandel and in Thames in an emergency situation using the Firth of Thames as the
Kia ora, Peter. There's certainly no reason why we can't do that. I mean, it's there are vessels available. Sea-Link in Auckland, they've got a number of different vessels, passenger and vehicle ferries, and they have, these vessels are available to basically private charter them. That's it's certainly an opportunity. I mean, and I know I had a couple of conversations with the New Zealand Navy about, what would happen in an emergency, and they, typical, they weren't at all worried about, if an emergency happened during a busy Christmas holiday period, how would they get people out? And it was pretty simple. They were just saying that they've got their own ro-ro barge as part of the New Zealand Navy, and they would bring that on, and they would be able to ship hundreds of people relatively quickly and easily. And so I would have thought it would have been a pretty straightforward process to get that vessel operating between Coromandel, whether it's Sugarloaf or Hannaford's Wharf, or even on the other side of the coast in Whitianga, and getting that vessel, whether it's a New Zealand Navy or it's a private chartered vessel, to get that taken to, Auckland or Kopu.
I guess I'm thinking of the situation where maybe the highway is taken out, we know, hey, it's going to be out for 2 months, how quickly we would be able to put in place effectively a taxi service or something like that. And is that the sort of thing that we could probably turn on in a day or two to facilitate that movement between, in particular, Coromandel and Thames?
Yeah, well, I guess it's about the number of people we're wanting to move. I know there are a number of sort of local sort of tourism or charter boat operators that are, you know, their vessels are chartered to, you know, carry 12, 14, 16 people. I'm pretty confident, especially with the state of the economy and the tourism market out there, that if the conversation was, you know, to set up a regular service, but, you know, between two destinations, that there would be local providers who would be able to provide that small taxi type operation. But if we talk, yeah, I guess it's, you know, we're talking about two different things. One is sort of a mass evacuation of people, which potentially could be thousands, and, you know, it's sort of a one-off type of thing that you'd get in an emergency response, or it's a hey, are we setting up a year-long response that creates a taxi operation? I mean, the opportunity is certainly there, and I think the providers are probably there for those smaller numbers of people.
Oh, thank you. That's a good answer, and I think it'd be really nice to know that we could do this sort of thing, but not have to. It would be ideal if anybody could just add that to the Christmas wish list. I feel our time is pressing, so thank you, Carl. It's been an excellent report. Lots of good things in there, and I hope it's more widely read than just this committee. And would anybody like to move that we accept the report? Thank you, Martin.
Second.
Thank you, John. All those in favour? Aye. None against, carried. Thank you so much, Carl, and thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Excellent. Now we've got a new report that we've not had before this morning, the District Library update, and I would like to invite our library manager, Shanna, up to the front. She's taking Glenn with her in the double act. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Your microphone. Yeah.
Morena, everyone. Take that you've seen the report, read it, and as it is a new one, if you've got any queries, that's what I'm here for. But yeah, it's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, can you give us some of the highlights? I must say the Minions room was a highlight for me once I worked out how to start getting out.
Yeah, so this report it just gives some stats that I already gather across district libraries, and it looks at us as an internal service, how we track what we're delivering in terms of collection, issues and borrowing, people through the door. But our real highlights with the community are how we engage with them and run things like escape rooms. So we have very clever staff who design programs and holiday programs, and these escape rooms are incredibly popular. In fact, they booked out the last school holidays, and you get put in a room with a group of people. You get the group of people, and then you get to try and work out the clues so that you get out of the room. So it's a free activity. It's about families coming together, something for the kids to do. There's no cost, and we had over 300 visitors come and do that at the Thames Library, and we're running that one in Tairua Library these coming school holidays, and you've got Dr. Seuss coming to Thames.
As a parent, I've found these library activities fantastic, because there seems to be a lack of other activities for children. I don't know if you have a comment on the role that the library plays in the broader community of providing those facilities.
Yeah, there is nothing. That's absolutely true. There's other little programs that happen, but they're all cost, and I know that in today's economic environment, that, having a child during school holidays in school, basically during school time can cost parents up to $50 a day. So we actually see a lot of grandparents that have kids and attend our holiday programs. So the grandparents have them and they want to get out of the house for a few hours with the kids so that they don't go stark gravy mad. And the fact that it's free and they can come and it's all organised and the kids have a fun time and then they can head home after that and have a bit of a cruisy afternoon. So it's invaluable. We do see a lot of grandparents who come time and time again and love coming to those sorts of sessions and entertain the kids. So,
right. Yeah, got questions on either side, but I saw Rebecca's first.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you. My question, is probably more for Councillor Morrissey. Where did we land in the LTP proposed conversations around the Coromandel library? Did that stay?
There was a significant cost to that,
Yes.
I think, from memory, and it still hasn't.
It didn't land.
Didn't land. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you. And the other thing is, why do we call them district libraries? This confuses. I'm sorry. This really confuses me, and that might not be a question for you. Thank you for your report. But they're funded locally, and I'm not. I actually don't understand what makes them a district library.
I think it's because they are managed and salaried by your council, whereas the community libraries receive a grant from council, but they operate independently and they manage themselves. That still looked confused though. That's helpful.
Through the chair, it might be because we're a district, we could call them council libraries, but I don't know if that rolls off the tongue quite the same. So
I think that just district funding has a different sort of meaning for other parts of the organisation.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Martin?
No, not strictly a question. In your library highlights, your second paragraph, I really like the fact that there's mentioned 5 different things that connect to books, to information, to advice, and to other people. And in fact, only one of them is books. And I think that's, we've really been trying hard over the last term or so to emphasise to people that books are just a small part of it. Well, not a small part, but are, yes, there's a collection of books there, but people, and I've seen people come into the library and, just sit around talking and making use of the other facilities. So I think that's a really important thing to note. And that was why we had requested that the performance measure be changed to a door counter rather than the number of, what was it, the number of active people using the cards?
Last term it was the number of active card users and the number of actual books taken out, which would feel.
Which, would seem to only capture a percentage of what.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah,
so there was no question there, but feel free to comment.
We feel libraries have done a really good job of evolving and becoming community hubs so that it's not just books. And in fact, in the report, I talked about that digital technology side of things is actually almost forming half of our service delivery as well. It's a rising sort of need where loads more things go online or they become technical, and you've got a generation of people who really don't know how to access, use, or even simple things sometimes like printing documents. Sometimes you still get, where can I fax this? We work it out, don't worry. But you will see that when we talk about libraries, that it's just a place for the community. It doesn't matter. You get all sorts of questions like, where's dog-friendly campgrounds, through to, where's your nearest AA centre, and so you actually find that libraries are a place just, I need to ask a question, I need to find this out. Loads of things stopped after COVID, groups and activities, and we've sort of taken on a lot of that within library space. So, cheers.
So being, with a supplementary question, if I may, being able, realising that you're doing that, and I know when there were things like forms for recovery grants and funding and things like that, people were coming to the library and you folks were able to help them out. Is there, are you resourced enough to be able to do that? Is there anything that could be done to assist
Yeah, I mean,
libraries in doing that?
Yeah, we always find that by default, we actually take on a lot of central government's work. So as WIN's office, yeah, sorry, but you know, WIN's office is, you know, limited hours. You can't just walk in. You may need an appointment. Some small towns don't even have them. IRD, all online. MSD, people have to load things onto an online site, so they have to scan things to get it into it in the first place. So a lot of those things we end up doing. KiwiSaver hardship funds, we have been doing quite a few of those recently. Yeah, so there's no funding from central government, and this is a universal, this is not just an our district library issue. You'll find that throughout New Zealand. And the other one that is becoming a real prominent thing at the moment is that during COVID, government subsidised and put in modems into a lot of houses in New Zealand who couldn't afford to do it. That funding is all ceased as of 1st of June. So those modems will no longer have internet. And we're a community partner for Skinny Jump, which is a program where it's a cheaper prepay internet system, and so we've been getting so many inquiries and we don't have enough modems. So yeah.
Have you got anything else being funded by MSD coming?
Yeah, I mean, we try and collaborate as much as possible. We've got a conversation happening around working with MSD and the Recovery Fund around putting in some kiosks for well, anyone really of all ages to look at employment and what's, you know, CVs and those sorts of stuff. So that's going to happen at Thames Library shortly as well. So yeah, any way we can support the community to better the community and those sorts of aspects, we'll do it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. No, it doesn't look like there are any further questions.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you very much for the report and for the work that you do. The library is a very welcoming space, and I always have a good chat, and it's lovely. Thank you.
We love having everyone there, so it's you know, nice to go to work and really enjoy what you do. So and have value. So it's really appreciated. Thank you.
Cool. Our recommendation for this is to just simply to receive the report. Have I got a mover? Oh, yeah, I'm going to fight for it. We can do John and Martin. Thank you so much. Speaking of recovery, we've now got 2.3, the social recovery update. Helen. And thank you. Welcome, Helen. Nice to see you.
Morena, thank you very much.
Hi, Pam.
I've asked Pam Bolt along from our Civil Defence Resilience Coordinator as well, because there's a little bit of work we're doing on our resilience project, putting a report through, application through to the, what's the name of that? No, the collab. Yeah, Super Local, Super Collabs Award for Super Local. So I'll take the report as read, but given that we are now almost 1 year up on our social navigators being with us, their contracts finished 28th of June. I've just got a PowerPoint to share, which covers off the highlights, not so much the highlights of the recovery program, but the highlights in terms of how this has benefited council's reputation and branding and how it's benefited our work program. So if you don't mind, if we can pull that up. Donna. Thank you. Next screen. So, oh, there it is. Sorry. Not working.
Gosh, that was a trucks on the road. Oh.
The next screen. So one of the key things, one of the key activities of our social navigators, and I've asked Kath Marketing along today that this is a space that she's been really involved in, is supporting our placarded property owners. And if you think about it, council is the one that goes in and puts these placards on these properties, and it's an incredibly stressful time for the residents or owners, and the change in attitude over those first few months with Kath being part of that navigator service, helping the residents or the owners with that has been incredible. So coming from originally quite a, you know, what are you doing here? You know, it's just one extra stress, to really helping, being a listening ear, but also helping navigate. Initially, it was things like government services, like the temporary accommodation service, and if there was any benefits or any wraparound service we could provide. But mostly the last sort of 6 months has been around really being a navigator into council services. So being that friendly ear and friendly face when you're having to deal with a whole range of council services. So that has been invaluable for those residents, and I think something that we want to try and get up and running sooner after the next inevitable event, really. There's also for the first time been a significant change in our reg placard numbers. So all credit goes to our compliance team, who also, the friendly faces of Stephen and Nio from the compliance team are amazing. So we've got great staff working in that space. So we've had a decrease in the number of red placards. A lot of them are now moved to yellow, so they can now be lived in, but with restrictions. We go to the next slide. Just some of the other highlights has been the Careers Roadshow. So in previous years, we've had the Can Do Expo in Thames, and the schools have had to bus their senior students here, which restricts the numbers of students that can attend. And this is about promoting career pathways and getting our local youth to think outside of just maybe leaving school and working at Pack and Save, or leaving school and going to university. There's a whole lot of other range of career options for them. The other benefit has been a really good relationship now exists between council and those schools. We went to 4 of the schools in the roadshow in August, but have been to all 5 secondary schools in the February roadshow. We are in conversations about definitely doing that Careers Roadshow on a bit more of a budget, because this has been recovery funded, but making sure we can continue to do that, because it's also the relationship that we have with our local businesses wanting to promote work, and our industry training organisations. Been amazing relationship building exercise, as well as really successful for those schools. The another one in terms of bringing our community groups together was the Te Ara Rere Kura conference we held in August last year. It was 126 service provider staff from social services around the district brought together for this, and the comment was, we never do this. We don't get together like Thames might come together, or some sector groups might do, but not the whole lot together like that. And council's role really was just facilitating this conference. Now we're working with Karakia Family Violence Intervention Network to repeat this again in September. So out of that is built a database of these community groups that are working in that, particularly in the family and sexual violence space, and bringing them together. So again, another really good relationship building exercise. The next one is just a variety of different things we've been involved in, and some highlights for me were having Mike King and Frank Bunce along to talk with the I Am Hope talk last year. And at the top left there, you've got Tapaya. So Tapaya went along to one of these talks. A young woman had a lot of personal grief in her family, started talking to Mike, and he says, come up to Auckland. I might have a job, you know, do you want a job? And she's now working for I Am Hope. So that is an example of, you know, connecting in our community with wider opportunities. But that was just magic that, you know, that she's now an ambassador for I Am Hope and working in Auckland there. The Mural Relief Social Recovery Fund has covered a lot of different community groups and organisations, but around Christmas we looked at supporting Christmas lunches, but also, you know, the extra demand on food banks and over Christmas, so supported that as well. Right, so it's the direct funding through the recovery grants, but it's also the indirect conversations and indirect connections that have happened. An example is Rural Support Trust, where they were funding and bringing speakers in to talk around our district, and we physically went along and helped with one of their dinners, their get together and chat dinners, but also definitely promoting their service, their what's been going on and helping in terms of sourcing venues. Another example is our Rangatahi network, which was set up as a recovery initiative, which is getting our agencies that work with youth around the district together, and out of that has come some amazing things. So we've helped support, I think TRAP came along and talked to the Thames Community Board this week. So we've supported some of the TRAP initiatives, and there's been like volunteer, Youth Week. There are so many weeks. Youth Week the other week, they've put, they went out and reached around the district and got panels from painted up by local rangatahi, and now that is a mural that can be seen at the local swimming pool, high school swimming pool here. So that has been recovery funded to some extent. It probably would have happened anyway, but it's the fact that we're working a lot closer with these rangatahi groups, and it's built that connection and relationship with council. Another, talking about relationships, it's dropped off the bottom a little bit, but a key piece of work that Cheryl Fitzpatrick, one of our navigators, has been working on alongside Helena and Becky is our community mapping database. So that's now up to over 630 organisations, which are, you know, our community groups, our sporting groups, our volunteer groups. We've got them all in one database now with their contact names, their contact details, and a little bit about what they do. And how we can use this going forward is we're running fundraising workshops this week. Funding HQ have been funded to come along and work in do a workshop in each of our main centres, which is where Cheryl is this week. So we put it out on social media and sent some emails out to some of the groups that we work with, but didn't have a big response because it's RSVP event. And then a week ago, went through used the community database and sent the same invite out to all the different sector groups. So it wouldn't go to the full 630 because there's some organisations in there that it might not be relevant. And straight away there's a flurry of sign-ups. You know, like I think Whitianga had gone from 2 people attending to now well over 30. So it's a time-consuming piece of work, and you needed to have a bit of local knowledge about who those community groups were in the first place to know who was missing. So a really invaluable tool. Connect-a-Bus, we've had Jas Breton this morning talking about that. So that has been a real highlight, really, is to enable that service. And the real shame is going forward, it's Waikato Regional Council are the ones responsible for public transport. But at least we've got some data, and we'll do a wrap-up report that we'll be able to forward to them to promote not just the figures, not just the fact that we've had 1,000 people using it, but it's the stories Jas Breton has been telling about it's not all about statistics and demographics. It's about the users that have no other way of going up to Coromandel, you know, or no other transport to come to town if they live somewhere as closest to Peru. So that's an opportunity for us to try and influence Waikato Regional Council's provision of transport across the district. Next slide is about how we are helping our community groups access funding. So one part of the picture has been, there was a social recovery fund last year, 300,000 went out to 54 organisations. And part of that was then a follow-up in-person conversation with them about, right, how else can we help you? What other ways are there for you to fund these activities? So there's a couple of initiatives that have come out of that. One is the fundraising workshops that we're working on at the moment, and following on from that, Funding HQ will provide a coaching session for up to 10 organisations in each of Coromandel, Thames, Whitianga and Whangamata and the wider areas around that, where they get 7 months of access to the whole Funding HQ services and website, but also the coaching session. Now, the Funding HQ workshop I attended this week was outstanding. I've been doing funding applications for various things for many years. I wish I'd been to something like, spent a couple of hours and got the information I got out of Jenny from Funding HQ was just really good. We also, we've had Shana from the library here, council fund service called Generosity NZ, which if you've got a library, we access it through a library card, you end up being able to look at all the different funding opportunities there are in New Zealand. So we're promoting that service through to each of our community groups as well. But as well as the direct relationships with communities in terms of providing social recovery funding, but also working with them on alternate ways. Kath particularly has been involved in supporting marae and our Māori communities with their funding applications through to Te Puna Kōkiri and other funding sources, which has been hundreds of thousands of dollars coming into our communities that potentially may not have happened had we not had that navigator service and that ability to do that. So the funding has been, and that will continue, these relationships that we've built with our community groups. The first step is being able to provide recovery funding, but now we've got a relationship to continue with that. And the next slide is, I think, in the Kai sovereignty space, Ministry of Social Development recovery funds, a bit of a focus on Kai sovereignty. So one is the piece of work around the Marakai or community gardens. And this initially started through Cyclone Gabriel. We pre-deployed food parcels up into the marae in the northern community, Manaia and Kennedy Bay, but also into Coromandel and Whangapawa, places like that, which can be easily isolated. So afterwards, those groups said, how can we make this happen in the future? So we're looking at a more longer term view on this, and it is doing things like providing freezers and generators to the marae, but also setting up and establishing these community gardens. So the idea is they can store resources, store food resources for future events. But in the interim, it's also about being able to feed their communities. And the community gardens are also linked through to the food banks as well. So for instance, Coromandel Independent Living Trust, who runs the food bank, is getting funding to set up much bigger gardens there. So that's been a really rewarding initiative. And Arbor Day, we're looking at, we put a post up saying, would your community group be interested in receiving some fruit trees to plant and care for, with the idea again of providing more food resources into our communities. Outstanding response. This was my favourite comment. Best post I've seen from a council ever. Awesome work, TCDC. And other posts, Karakia District Council, how about you do this? Or lots of really positive response, but also now we've got a really good distribution of fruit trees going out into community groups right around the district, supported by our parks team. So that Kai Sovereignty's been a really good project to work on. And then we've got our Resilient Hub project. So we're working towards, or when I say we, Pam's doing the lion's share of work here, 35 resilience hubs. So that isn't just a container of equipment. Behind that sits a community group that are being resourced to respond to their community, and they've been offered, or they asked for, can we have some first aid training? So we've delivered 7 first aid community courses, with 3 Red Cross psychosocial first aid courses also delivered, where those community groups have been able to send representatives to those courses. And we've got some more first aid courses probably coming up, just because the demand has been quite high. across in the car park over the back here, you'll see a green container that's going to store Civil Defence Centre cache resources for our Thames area. And there's going to be caches like this in Whiringa, Whangata and Coromandel. Pam has the details about what's in those caches. And then finally, we've got the Local Government New Zealand Super Collab Award that we're going to put through. Now, this is just a 90-second video that's been prepared to support that application, but I think it summarises really well the value of this Resilience Hub project. So, Donna, if you're here with me.
Yeah. May or may not work, so just...
Yeah. This doesn't, we've got plan B, have we?
Possibly.
So, we do know that guy. He's muted.
Hang on. I just have to unmute first.
I don't think he can hear you. Just thinking I may have to review my attendance at the awards dinner, which I had previously said I would not go to.
Okay, it doesn't like it completely gone now.
Yep. Have we lost people online as well? Cool.
People online are still here. So we can send the link out.
Okay.
That would be really good. So it's just, is there any questions about the report or the work that the social navigators have been doing?
I have a question. The Careers Roadshow and how that's gone around the four different regions. Is there any sort of significant? Does it cost more to go to the different ones, and what's the sort of scale of that? I mean, obviously we would provide the venues if they're council-owned halls, but what's the sort of scale of what that's costing?
I think the main. So we went to each of the schools hosted in their school halls, apart from Thames, where we went to the Civic because we had other schools coming. The main cost was in the in-zone coach this time. That was a cost to have that come, but yet it's a real feature of the.
Sorry, that's the
in-zone careers coach. So the in-zone careers coach, it's a bus set up with a whole lot of workstations, and you can go in and look up lots of, you just put in you're interested in plants, and then it'll bring up a whole lot of different career choices around plants that you can go in and look at lots of different videos. And this is the initiative that we're now getting the kiosks. MSD have funded it for us to have those kiosks going into those 5 high schools. The cost, I think, it's getting the organisations and the training organisations to buy in to coming rather than to one day. The cost for them to go around the 5 locations in the 5 days, making it 5 days.
Right.
But there was also costs in terms of the catering. We provide sausages for the students. So it's just thinking a bit more laterally about that, but also Mayor's Taskforce for Jobs, we can use that funding next year. Originally, we were thinking about, again, maybe just doing 1 or 2 locations, but after going to the 5 locations and the feedback from the principals, it's just so invaluable for them that I think, it's worth trying to, as much as we can, to keep it mobile.
Yeah, because I guess for some smaller schools, I'm trying to put words in your mouth, but for some smaller schools, the idea of getting a bus and getting people across there and supervising and getting them back again would just make it a prohibitive exercise.
But in the past, I think we've funded the buses, but it means you bring 1 bus load. So for a school like Mercury Bay, you might only send your year 12, 13 students.
Yeah.
At a school like Manaia, that might be a minivan. Whereas we had the best day and the best interaction with Manaia High School when we went to the kura up there when we went. So.
Cool, thank you.
So I believe that we've now got our screen back. For those online, we actually lost the screen for a little while and we've got it back. So we're not going to risk the video just in case. But Dee said that she'd circulate that to us so we can all see it and watch it over and over as much as we like. I would also just like to acknowledge that while you were speaking, Helen Daly has entered. Welcome. It was an apology for lateness and she's here now, so that's all good. Are there any further quick questions? No. Cool. Excellent. Well, thank you. That's Helen, I'm amazed that you have time to breathe. It looks like your team and you've been extremely busy. And I'd be really happy to move from the chair that we receive this report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, John. I'll do it. Yeah. All those in favour? Aye. Excellent. But you don't go anywhere, Helen, because you're up for the next item as well. We've got a Mayor's Taskforce jobs update.
I just also want to just jumping back, just express my thanks to both Keith Makari and Cheryl Fitzpatrick, our community navigators, social navigators the last year. Just amazing work that they've done. So thank you to both of them. So the next one's Mayor's Taskforce for Jobs. So it's a 2-year contract, and we've just been the contracts for 2 years, but we didn't get the details until recently about the second year. So the second year, which is the 24-25 year, we are going to get, when you're already, we get 20% less funding. So we're getting slightly less funding, but also slightly less outcomes. Definitely going ahead with that, and we'll continue to partner with Ngāti Maru because that's been a really successful partnership. Some, I'm taking the report as read, but just some additional to the report is that Ministry of Social Development, the in-zone kiosks, we've got 11 coming to the Thames-Coromandel and Karakia district, and that really helps our, not just our students, but also job seekers look at career pathways. And when looking at citing one in the library, and the other one has been some MSD funds that we've managed to secure, which I think is around 35,000, which we'll be using to help fund driver license courses around the district as well. A key part of this, our Mayor's Taskforce this year has been how we can tie that up with recovery, and what's been really successful has been those 6 MTFJ cadet positions, which are funded by both recovery and Ministry of Social Development. And part of that is introducing a local rangatahi into what a career at council looks like, helps them in terms of training, but also really helps out our particularly parks and open spaces team that's been really slammed with Cyclone Gabriel. So I've got Cairo, who's one of our cadets, along this morning, just getting understanding of what the council meetings and council process is like. I think that's the main points. Is there any questions on the Mayor's Taskforce report?
Only that the awards evening the other night was an extremely uplifting thing. There's been a lot of uplifting events recently at the council, but that was an especially uplifting event. So thank you for all your organisation for that. How many people graduated that evening? Do you remember?
There were 17 turned up in person. We had, I think originally it was meant to be 28, but we had a number that, who said before about COVID being quite prevalent at the moment, we had a number that were unable to attend, but we had 17 certificates handed out for those that have graduated through an industry training organisation or through like the organisations like Valley Education that don't have a, you know, like a university graduation ceremony. So it's a shared event with Karakia District Council and funded by Mayor's Taskforce for Jobs.
It was excellent. But it doesn't appear to have, we don't appear to have any questions for you at this point. So thank you.
Thank you.
We're just happy to receive the report. Have I got a mover and a seconder for that? Martin and Rika, thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you. Jess. Item 2.5, economic update. This is a meaty report that takes a while to read. This is definitely more than one cup of tea to get through this. Good morning, welcome. Jessica, Mitch.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I think you can take it as read, but I would really welcome you to point out any highlights or anything that's been new since this was presented to us.
It's looking sad, so I won't follow Helen's. Can't follow Helen's upbeat, nice summary. Yeah, so open to any questions. I'll take the report as read.
Go on, questions. Out you come. Rika.
It's probably a little bit unfair of me because I'm going to reference this report and your next report. But we're talking about our average house prices have fallen here. We've also now the most expensive district in the country to buy property, and we have leapfrogged Queenstown. My understanding, is that correct?
Yes.
Oh yeah, we were always the most unaffordable place to buy property. Like we have been for the last 5 years, more than Queenstown.
More so than Queenstown.
Yeah, consistently. So we're consistently, because they have more expensive properties, but they have higher average wages, and affordability is a ratio, I guess, of the average wage versus the average house price. And so it's harder for people, the average person, to buy property in Thames-Coromandel than it is in Queenstown, but they have more expensive properties.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the sole question?
I guess some context for us with this sort of the economic slowdown, I guess, is that Thames-Coromandel District feels it harder than other parts of the country because our economy, our local economies depend on tourism, discretionary spending in retail and hospitality, and also construction. And like you may have also already been hearing from the community, the construction sector is already slowing down quite considerably. That's having a real impact on employees, business owners, families, people who have mortgages, and people who spend money in our communities. So when looking back at the much different scenario, but the global financial crisis, we took a harder hit than the rest of the New Zealand on average, and we felt it for a little bit longer as well. So it's still unclear whether this is going to be how long, I guess, the downturn will last. I think that some of the underlying factors for New Zealand are still pretty strong, and this is sort of a recession by design. Yeah, but we do take the knock pretty hard.
Could I just add a couple of points to that, as well as that, as part of the ED activity, and also with the community development, is working with the likes of MSD and businesses to connect up people who are looking for work to businesses that may be able to accommodate different types of people coming in and working in different places. So that's a piece of work that is being done at the moment. And I think also from the ED perspective, it's about still being able to signpost where economic activity is in the district and where there is investment. So a point in case is aquaculture, and working on the promotion of how that is a thriving industry for or it can become more of a thriving industry. So looking about the case for investment in those as well.
And then they're all gone quiet. No, I didn't have any specific questions either, except to just acknowledge that you are a small team that work really hard. And I think it probably doesn't get appreciated enough. So thank you for the work that you do here, there and everywhere.
We feel appreciated.
Very pleased. Last chance for questions. Dali, you got anything?
I'm all good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. In that case, don't go anywhere because you're for the next item. But for this one, anybody happy to receive the economic development update?
I'll do
Rebecca,
that.
John, thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Nobody against?
Bye.
Excellent. All right, so we've still got you for this next item, which is the state of housing in the Thames-Coromandel district, something that's much talked about in the community. So anything that you could tell us about and add would be great.
Yeah, that's great. So I'll take it as read, but I'm just highlighting a few points which comment back to some of the unique characteristics of our district. So we've talked before in this committee as well, and more generally about the ageing population that we have, and that's quite a unique characteristic of our district. The census results that are just out have also shown that that's continuing on, that our residents are ageing and our median age is actually increasing. So interesting as we'll see more statistics come out from census. We won't get those TA level, so detailed level statistics around housing and population and demographics for localized levels until next year. But as they come out, that can present more of a better understanding of those current housing challenges and opportunities and these similar characteristics. What else? We comment quite frequently around occupancy rates of our housing. So we know that we have been building homes, but that most recently residential consents have been falling, and that's not unique to our district, that's across New Zealand. But as Mitch commented earlier, that construction is a really big, important industry for our district, and obviously that also has implications for housing. But we are building homes. We think we've done some estimates with our consents that have been turned into, what's the correct term? There's a term around it being like checked once it's been code of compliance. Thank you, that's it. And it looks like the homes that we have originally consented are being built, but lots of our pressures still remain, which suggests alongside our unoccupancy and actually empty rates, which show that those homes are not at all lived in, suggests that we are building, but we're not building the right homes if we're looking towards building homes that are for families, younger people, the typical working age population. And then, yes, we have the same struggle then with housing affordability. So we know that that characteristic of older retirees and also some low income earners means that on average, with these high house prices, again, on average, and combined with those lower household incomes, means that we have this big unaffordability issue. Quite hard to make statements around the general district as a whole, because there are definitely pockets of inequity around housing, and we have those distinct communities that have pockets where your homes are 70% empty by definition, versus other areas which aren't as much. So yeah, really interesting challenges for our district around this and how we best think about housing quality, affordability and availability. I'll leave it there, I think.
All those things working together are quite a complex picture, really, isn't it? Because it's not just about affordability, it's about quality and availability as well.
Yeah.
John, was that a question?
No, it's a good report, and I'd like to think that other councillors that are not part of this committee actually get to see it and read it, because it does feed into your thinking when you're dealing with bigger pictures like spatial plans and what we need to do. We really haven't got a shortage of housing on the peninsula. We've got a shortage of housing that is appropriately used. Yeah, it's a good report, and it does help shape my thinking. So thanks.
What he said. Anybody else? Donna, you looked poised for comment. I think Martin does. No. Okay, good.
Yeah, I just noted with some concern at the bottom of page 115, talking about that housing quality, and the top of page 116, where Waikato Housing Initiative estimates around 1,300 mouldy and 1,700 damp dwellings in our district, and upwards of 4,000 people living in those dwellings. I don't know if, and I know there was an initiative, the regional council were trying to do cheaper loans for that sort of thing, but they ran into some trouble with the loan shark, the anti-loan shark legislation, which meant they had to go away and rethink it, and I don't know that they have done anything like that. And I don't know if there's appetite for our council to get into that space at all, but it's yeah, obviously there's some very expensive houses that aren't mouldy and damp, and then there's some clearly some houses in low quality that are mouldy and damp. Yeah, I don't know. Did you know of any initiatives that might be possible that other councils are trying and that are working?
I probably can't comment on what other councils are doing, but just to say that this dashboard is created for each district, so it's, you know, there'll be some assumptions underneath the modelling of it, but still not a good sign. I believe that the regional council had some healthy homes related initiative, which they've now decided that the funding is wrapped up for that. And I am aware that central government also had, maybe it was linked to that, around, you know, putting insulation in small dwellings and heat pumps. But again, I think that funding has like wrapped up because it's met the end of its you know, purpose in terms of installing heat pumps and
Clearly
insulation.
they've solved the problem.
There's a policy intention versus outcome, I suppose, is yeah, another question. Laura?
Oh, just a couple of comments. So Local Government New Zealand are working with lots of different councils to pull together basically all the data on different projects that have been successful around the country. So it's not about reinventing the wheel. And that is also something that the ED team is involved in. It's just initial stages to pull together at the moment what that looks like around the country and to share information. Also, this report is a bit of a scene setter for your workshop where we've got the Waikato Housing Initiative and the Waikato Land Trust to have a discussion about what councils can do, what levers we've got, what opportunities can we work with regionally on. And I just might just get Brian to make a couple of comments in regards to some of the things around housing and some of the rural areas and a bit of a project on that.
Thanks, Lorna. And through you, Madam Chair, just a response to Councillor Rodley's question. There is a project at the moment, mainly in John's ward, where we're working with HUD in some rural communities where cabins that are a bit more fit for purpose are being placed temporarily through the recovery orders in council, so that the maintenance and upgrading of the main dwellings can be addressed. So we're partnering with Te Whareke and HUD on that. It's only 20 cabins, so it's not much to the bigger picture, Martin, that you talk about, but it's a start of some of the initiatives we're working on.
No further questions for anybody? It appears that we will continue this in our workshop. So thank you too for coming in. Does anybody would anybody else like to remove? I'll start that whole thing again. Is there anybody in the committee who would like to move to receive this report? Thank you, Rika. Thank you, Martin. All those in favour? Aye. Cool.
Aye.
Oh, thank you, Dali. It doesn't feel like anybody's against, so the motion is carried. Excellent. Lorna, Group Manager's report.
I'll just take it as read. I just want to make a couple of comments following the long-term plan deliberations, and just to acknowledge that the council's had an extremely tough time and, you know, very robust discussions around community development and community investment. And so I want to acknowledge the debate that was had on that. It's something that councils around the country have also been having the same discussions. I went to a community wellbeing conference in Wellington last week, where there are a lot of community development managers and group managers in the room. They are all dealing with their LTPs, and this again is an issue that they're all grappling with, about having to deal with the infrastructure investment, sticking to knitting, but also about council's role in community development and what that means. One of the things that we are going to improve on is the way that we report about community development in terms of data and what the return on investment is in community development. Treasury have a tool that they actually use to look at sort of like monetising the amount of investment councils put into community development. An example that they gave at the conference last week was around homelessness and Wellington investing in that. But then they looked at, they calculated and modelled just what the longer term ROI was and not having to, and spending that money and how that helped improve outcomes longer term. So we're going to be looking at those types of data sets and looking at how we can report that so that there's you know, an understanding of all the different types of outcomes and what wellbeing is for the council. I also just want to touch on, when we're just talking about homelessness, just rough sleeping as an issue here in Thames in particular. We are holding a hui next week with a lot of different community partners, police and agencies. Council is a partner in this, and again, this is a community development activity. While we don't own it, we help support and facilitate it, but it is a part of what Council's doing as a partner in this district, and is, you know, how we all play a piece in this. I won't comment too much about that until after the hui, but it's just to say that we acknowledge that there is some issues at the moment with rough sleeping in Thames in particular. The other thing just to point out is, and I know in audit and risk, we had Ian Morton talking about improvement in project delivery. One of the things from my group is around community-led projects and looking at how those are better framed up. Looking at how council's part in that, because as we know, communities have fantastic ideas. They want councils to participate. Sometimes it's our, it could be on our land, it could be on our buildings. And it's just about who's responsible, who's accountable, having all of those different positions and frameworks set up early so that there's no unrealistic expectations. We all understand about budgeting, and we're also helping these groups try and find external funding to continue that work. So that's a piece of work that the team's just started to work on in earnest. One of the examples that we're going to start with is a trail, because as you're aware, there's a lot of trails that traverse council land, dock land, private land. And so we're just using that as an example to start this sort of framework. So then that gives, there's a lot of trail networks around the district. It's going to give them a better understanding of the processes that are involved, because it is a lot. I think we talked about it yesterday in the Thames Community Board. There's a lot of, I guess, barriers, and we're trying not to be the barrier. We want to be the enabler. So it's just about how we can improve on that.
Great. Question, I'll take Martin first.
Just a very simple question. Have you got a date for the rough sleeping?
Yes, we do, and elected members should be invited to that. If you haven't received an invite, I will follow that up.
You have not.
I don't think we have. No.
Okay.
The 10th.
Sorry?
Yeah, have you got the... I'll just talk offline about that.
Thank you.
Couple of questions. Is Thames the only town with rough sleepers? I'm not aware of any in Coromandel. Nowhere else in the district?
Not to the extent that we are having a conversation with a lot of different agencies. There probably is some people that are sleeping rough around the district, but in this case, this is where we've heard the greatest concerns at the moment.
Okay. And the other thing is Lindsay Road, which is great, a little bit in there about it, but it says the draft survey office plan attached shows the areas, so I couldn't find that.
There was no attachment.
There's no attachment.
Yeah.
And before the legal team lodged that with Lynn's, is that going to go back to council? Because I understood it was. Am I right or wrong on that?
Yes, so I understand it will be. I will send the attachment. We do have it, and yes, it does have to go back to council. Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Peter, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go on.
In the report, you talk about staff are actioning alcohol-related issues in the homeless thing. What's being done?
Our licensing staff have visited all bottle stores along with police in terms of making sure that they're appropriately complying with their obligations around the sale of alcohol. There is something in the legislation that talks about amenity in good order. So essentially, if a bottle store is selling alcohol to someone that they know is just going to breach the alcohol ban immediately outside of the premises, they shouldn't be selling that alcohol. And we had a number of complaints linked to some of our rough sleeping community being able to purchase alcohol quite easily and then drink it immediately in that public place and cause some antisocial behaviour issues. So yeah, working with police and the licensees to make sure that that was appropriately addressed.
Thanks, Brian. Doesn't, oh yeah.
And just one last comment. The networking sessions around the district now appear to be going pretty well. All community boards are fully engaged by the looks of it. Come on. That's, yes, no, I see Mercury Bay has got a heap there, councillor.
I think that I was going to raise this question. I mean, I've gone through, and I wouldn't call them networking sessions. They're sessions where one or two community board members were invited to something. It wasn't something where the whole board was invited to sit and connect. So I think that if I look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, maybe the whole board were invited to, but the rest are where, you know, 1 or 2 of us are involved in a stakeholder group or.
Okay, so it's not the community networking.
Yeah,
such.
These are not all of the networking sessions. Only about sort of 5 of them are.
Shame, I was hoping it was full on over there.
No,
I can
not at all.
confirm that Coromandel's done all of its networking sessions with every board member present, but thank you.
Okay, no, that's all good then. We can talk about that more over the break if you like. I can wax lyrical about.
I just think if we're going to paint an accurate picture, we should. And these are not all networking sessions, because there are some sessions here I would have liked to have gone to, but clearly invite only.
Yeah, so I can speak from the perspective of the Thames Community Board, where we, at the very beginning of the term, sort of broke ourselves up into areas of interest. And so I would, as a member of the board, would not be expected to go to every single thing, but it would be appropriate to consider it as part of. So I didn't go and talk to Thames High School, but we as a board had visibility at Thames High School because we had a member go and talk to them. So perhaps we do need to talk later on about exactly how this is presented in the report. You know, whether it's the board has had visibility on this group, has had interaction with this group, versus the board has had a networking session with this group, because I think it's important to capture, but maybe there are 2 different levels of how we're interacting.
Yeah. Just answering John's question in terms of networking days. These are not networking days.
We'll continue to evolve this, eh? But it doesn't look like there are any more specific questions for Lorna about this, so I'm happy to move from the chair that we receive the group manager's report. Have I got a second? Oh, I've got 2 seconders. Pick your favourite. No, I actually did see John's hand up before I saw Martin's hand up, so I'll pick John as that. But it's not because he's a favourite in any way, shape or form. Love them both equally. With that, any further discussion on the motion? No. So we're receiving it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody against? Fantastic. We've got nobody against, so we're all good. Thank you. It's declared passed. And that's the end of the meeting. 11:33, I declare the meeting closed.
Well done. Thank you very much.